welcome to We're in This Together, a conversation about beta readers and critique partners. To start us off, I am going to introduce myself and everyone else will introduce themselves. Write books. My name is Danielle Ellison and I'm a librarian here at the Edmond Library in Oklahoma, and I am also an author. My previous novels that have come out were Salt and Storm, 2 different books. And then The Sweetheart SHAM, The Crush Collision, all of those are with Entangled Publishing, and a book I self-published called Days Like This. And I am currently working on a fantasy for the first time. Next.
Hi, I am Tracy Harry. I live in Connecticut. I previously worked in publishing for a few years. I worked in editing. And now I work in a car dealership, which is exciting. And I also write. Currently, I'm working on a contemporary YA book. Been working on and off on it for a couple of years, but yeah, that pretty much sums me up.
I'm Jenny Paranovic. I live in Philadelphia. I am represented by Amy Giuffrida of the JD Lit agency. I'm currently on sub with A Beauty and the Beast retelling. I write YA, historical fantasy. I'm working on my first adult novel that I'm really excited about. During the day, I am a middle school librarian and I teach 8th grade research classes. I like middle schoolers. I know that makes me a little weird. And that's pretty much everything about me. Oh, I'm a Pitch Wars mentor this year, which is a contest for people who have completed manuscripts who are looking for mentorship. I'm co-mentoring with one of my critique partners, and I'm happy to answer questions about that process because I think it's a really good way to meet people and make friends.
Hi, I'm Cindy Thomas. I'm a young adult author. I'm agented by Jessica Watterson of Sander District Agency in California. I have a book that was self-published a few years ago called Beckon Me that actually I shouldn't have even mentioned because I pulled it. But I have 5 boys and I work from home as a paralegal.
Awesome. So that's a little bit about who we are. And now we're going to tell us a little bit about how we know each other. And then we're going to jump into the basics, like what is a critique partner, what is a beta reader, etc. So I'll just start and I'll say that I'm kind of like this person who comes into places and makes awesome things happen. As in, like, I just like find cool people and I lob myself onto them and I'm like, you're going to be my person. Welcome. And I love that. I love bringing people together. And I am the common denominator here between the 4 of us. I met Cindy first, and actually she was the one who wanted to be my friend. And I was like, what are you doing? This is weird. But here we are. And we've been best friends and critique partners since
2010.
Long time, like over forever. And then I met Tracy next. We were both book bloggers at the time, and I became an editor at a small press, and I started an internship program, and Tracy was one of our first interns, and she was very talented and very good at her role and learned a lot, and so she became my beta reader, and I've literally not written a book without Tracy's involvement, so she's pretty priceless to me. And then I met Jenny, last but not least, at an author event, and we were the rejects from said author because she didn't want to sit beside us. And who knew that, I don't know, 7-ish years later that we'd be here. So that's how we all know each other. You guys can add anything that you like if I miss something.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little more about all of that too as we go on. So who wants to start us off? Tell us, like, what's a critique partner?
To me, a critique partner is somebody that I'm not afraid to send like bits of the work to, like not necessarily giving them the book as a whole, and it's often like unedited, like I'll just finish a chapter and email it to my critique partner. They're like my first eyes on a project, if that makes sense.
How does it work for you, Cindy?
I always view the critique partner as like someone else who writes similarly to me, like someone that is also an author or aspiring to be a published author and just has similar tastes in books as I do. Danielle and I started that way. Like we both were writing young adult novels and we came together in that way, and it's just worked ever since. So it doesn't always have to be the same. I do have a couple other critique partners that write different genres, and I think that's helpful too. But yeah.
Tracy, will you tell us what a beta reader is?
So a beta reader is somebody who will read over your manuscript and kind of give you some feedback on it, you know, look at things like the plot, things like characters, and kind of give you some information on that and like what their opinion is of it. And I mean, I think sometimes a critique partner kind of gets more into the details where a beta reader is just kind of looking at the whole picture. That's how I've personally have viewed it.
Yeah. I also think I feel like Tracy is my beta reader, but sometimes we cross the line of critique partner just because but I don't do a lot of her work in return because I'm a bad friend. But a critique partner is usually somebody who you do their work and they do yours, and you work together and you exchange each other. I think that's the major difference, is like a beta reader's not actively, like, I want to say writing with you, but not actually writing with you, you know, typically. So,
and I think it's like also important to say that like, just because you're critique partners for like this project or this book, it doesn't mean that like you can't step back or get promoted, you know, they kind of ebb and flow based on who's busy, you know, what sort of things you're working on.
So we wanted to make sure we gave you guys our definition of what we were talking about. That way, as we move forward, you can kind of like understand the distinction that we're creating in our panel. Does all that make sense? Everybody? Cool. So let's just jump in. Let's talk about the role we play in each other's writing process and critique partners in general. First.
Do you mean like how we utilize each other?
Yeah,
like,
well, yes, that, and you know, even though all of you are my partners, like Cindy is my critique partner and Jenny is and Tracy is, you're not all each other's critique partners. So just like share a little about what that look like. What does your critique relationship look like in your life currently, basically?
Oh, like with like other people besides each other. Yeah, I can go first because I like three of them are here. I have a really amazing writing group. Caitlin, Risa, Arlie, they're all here. We met on applying for Pitch Wars last year, and we are on a Slack channel together, and we share like snippets and encouragement. And if someone is busy, you know, they don't have to read, but we'll often like post like, who wants to read this? Who wants to read that? And I love all you guys too. And that has been like the most incredible thing over the last year, is getting to know everybody and like having this really tight knit group of people to kind of share work between and learn from. So that's what my situation's like right now.
Cindy?
I have a different relationship with different people. So for example, Danielle, I usually send you a manuscript once I'm done with it, or at least there is a draft, a full draft, unless I really need help with a scene or something like that. But my other critique partner, Christy, when she reads for me, she reads as I write. So literally every night I email her whatever I have, even if it's 200 words, or I just send her the full manuscript as I go every single day, and she'll read as I write it. And that's helpful because I get it from two different viewpoints, like someone who's been there the whole way through, but maybe can't see the forest for the trees. And then there's like Danielle who can look at it and say, here's the issue, fix it. So it's just a different relationship, I think. I only have the two though. I have some beta readers, but I just have the two people that I trust the most that read every day.
And your agent.
Correct. Yes.
Tracy.
I actually don't really have many critique partners or beta readers. Danielle is one, but I am terrible at sending her anything as well. Yeah, I kind of overthink my drafts a little too much, and then I hesitate on sending them. But I do have one friend who is a screenwriter, and so I send her little snippets of things for her opinion. And, you know, it'll just be like a chapter at a time or something like that. But that's usually how I work.
So I obviously have the three of them. I literally, when I say I can't write a book without Tracy, I mean, like, I literally don't know how I'd write a book without Tracy, because she is like my ultimate, all of them are awesome cheerleaders, even if they haven't read what I'm writing. But Tracy is my like, oh, I'm thinking about this, or or I'll text her and be like 2 a.m. and I'm like, hey, I just had this idea. What do you think about this? And then she'll respond at a normal time and be like, oh, I think that's great. I'm currently doing some deep dives into a character's backstory, and I texted her and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about all of these things. Is there something else that you want to know about that maybe I didn't think of? And she like threw her answers back at me, but she reads I share my stuff with her in a Google Doc, and she reads everything as I write it. And I brainstorm with her all the time. Cindy usually and Jenny both usually read at the end of the draft when I'm all done. And then I have, besides, they're my core three, but I do have a couple others like that I turn to sometimes. And I'm kind of restarting, so I have the three of them, so I'm sort of restarting my writing career. So that's where I am. And honestly, they're so instrumental to getting a book done, and having a group of people that you know you can turn to if it's, hey, I'm stuck, or hey, I have this idea, or can you read this book and tell me it doesn't suck? It's just really great.
Sometimes
It's
you just
so
need that
important.
here. Yeah, someone
Yeah.
that's going to say, no, like, you're not allowed to stop here. You need to keep going. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. My like main critique partner is the reason why I like finished this book that I got my agent with. And, you know, she texts me constantly. She's read every draft of every scene. So I couldn't have done it without any of you guys.
So even though all of the three of you are my partners, when you have a group of a writing community or critique partners or beta readers or whatever, it doesn't have to be just those three people. You can use other people, and you can have different groups for different times when you're going through different things. And so I think sometimes we think, oh, we need this one set of critique partners, and that's not always. Sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes they change as time changes and people grow up, have kids.
Run out of time.
Stop writing. I've had some really wonderful readers and critique partners who just don't write anymore, which makes me sad, but hopefully one day they'll start again.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about this, I'd love for each of us to just talk on one thing that I know that we've all done well. I kind of said mine. So Jenny, I'd love to hear from you about finding the right ones.
Oh, yeah. So I think it really depends on the project, right? You want to find people who are very who know like the type of book that you're trying to write. So for me, for this book, for example, like I especially sought out people who I know like read fantasy, wrote fantasy, who like knew the expectations of the genre. And it, you know, my next book is an adult book, and so my readers for that may change, because it's really like who it not only is available, but who knows the type of story I'm trying to tell and can like help me like figure out the nitty gritties of what the market wants.
Cindy, let's do Tracy first. Tracy, could you talk about the importance and the role of a beta reader in your drafts?
So I think it's really important. I'm gonna try to go off of like how me and you work together. So I feel like I'm someone that you bounce a lot of your ideas off of while you're writing, like you mentioned the Google Doc. So I feel like it's important to have somebody who you can bounce ideas off of and just talk things out if you get stuck, and just have somebody there that you can just say, you know, where am I going with this? What am I doing? I don't know. Should I just skip ahead? Should I rewrite this? You know, I think sometimes a beta reader can be just a really good bouncing board off to somebody to just go off of, and also to just kind of say like, hey, maybe this scene isn't working, or why is this character suddenly doing this, you know, and asking you questions that kind of make you rethink where you're going with the story.
Awesome. I agree 100% based on our experience. Cindy, I'd love for you to talk about some of your beta readers, especially ones that you've been sending things to lately.
Okay, so I write young adult books, and it's just super important to me to actually get the book in the hands of people the age range I'm writing for. So I have formed relationships with a few people that are teens that have agreed to read for me, no matter what it is that I write. I always send it to them once I'm done with the draft, once I've done a revision, and I don't give them any info about the book, just like if they were to pick it up at the library. Like I want them to just be completely surprised. I don't send them the synopsis, like what Danielle might read or have talked to me about a gazillion times. So she already knows what to expect when she's reading it. But when I give it to the teens, I just say like, here's this young adult book. It's a contemporary or it's paranormal or whatever. And I just hand it off and then go hide in a hole for a few days until they finish reading it, because I just want to know, like, does it sound like what a teen would sound like? Do they connect with the story? Is it realistic to them? Because like, I love to read young adult novels, but I'm writing for them. So I want their input and their thoughts on, is the story working? And I found that like the most rewarding so far, like just having the beta readers, because they'll be completely honest and they're not scared to say like, hey, this scene's weird or whatever. It's been very helpful. So I love that I found a couple that will do that for me. Yeah.
I asked some of my students to read for me this last time, and it was the best. Like the one day, like
yeah,
one of the kids, she like threw open the door of the library and she's like, Miss Paranovic, I will die for this character. And I was like, okay, like check that off the list. Like yeah. It's so great to get like that feedback from the kids because they're who I write for too.
And they're so excited, you know, like they just like it's exactly how you felt when you were a teenager and you read a book and fell in love with the characters. Like the last email I got was, I will read anything you write. Oh my God, I love these characters. Like I will, like I was like, yes, like it's just so rewarding. And like, you're like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. Like, yeah.
How does, Cindy and Jenny, how does having an agent fit into your critique partner process? Or doesn't it? You can be honest.
I very recently agented. I signed with Amy in March. And so right now I'm writing my first book having her. And I've bounced ideas off of her, which has been like really great. And she's really receptive to that. But I waited until I had like the first third, like the first act of my current project done to send to her and then be like, should I keep going? Should I not keep going? But I'd also let like a few people look at it first to kind of give me some feedback and get it to a place that I felt comfortable with it. I wasn't going to send her like a rough draft. But I also wanted to have her eyes on it before I felt like I was like wasting time.
Yeah. So I think it depends on your agent for sure. Mine is not someone who wants to read anything until it's something readable. She has definitely welcomed me to bounce ideas off of her. And I've even sent her like synopsises or scenes that I was thinking that might be the start of a story. And she's read those, but she's just much too busy to read like a very rough draft of something. Like she'll tell me, oh, I like this idea or not. or this is how I would approach it if I have an idea and she's not 100% in on it. So it's definitely been different. We've been together for 5 years. So it changes things for sure.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the fun stuff. Let's talk about the expectations. Like, what should we look for in a critique partner? We made a short list, but talk about it.
I think
Honesty.
first, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say honesty. Go ahead. You're good.
No,
Honesty.
honesty, yeah. I think somebody's going to be honest, but also somebody who's going to not like just tear you down at every turn. Like you want somebody who genuinely likes your writing.
Yeah.
Like you don't want somebody who's going to discourage you or make you think that you don't have it. You want somebody who's going to be honest, but also like constructive.
We touched on this a little bit, but someone who reads and writes what you read and write. Like if I'm writing, like right now I'm writing an adult fantasy. I like have read this much adult fantasy, so I'm kind of just like winging it and kind to read those books now. But I want critique partners who, I have someone who has said they would read for me. They're a history buff and they love fantasy. So for me, that's going to be really great because I need someone who knows history and knows fantasy, because I don't, like Jenny was saying, I don't know all the rules of fantasy. But if I was writing an adult fantasy, I wouldn't want to give it to someone who's writing YA contempt and never done anything else, because they may or may not be able to help me in the way that I need help.
Right.
So that's a big one for sure.
I think a big thing too is timelines, which doesn't sound like it would be a big deal, but it totally can be a big deal, because if you are working on something and you need someone that can read as you go, and this person says, no, I can't read it until the end, then, well, that's not helpful. Or if you needed something, well, my agent needs it by the end of the month and that person can't look at it in time, or they say they can, but then they won't, which I know I've been guilty of. Sometimes life gets in the way and you try to help and you just don't have time. So timelining is like super important and definitely something that should be discussed ahead of time. Because if it doesn't matter how much you like the person or their writing or vice versa, if you don't match up in that way, it's just going to be awkward and weird. And like Jenny was saying before, like these things fluctuate. Like that person might not be the best CP for you for this book, but for the next book, they might have better timelines to help you. So, or vice versa.
And also just going off of what Jenny said about constructive criticism, you really want somebody who is going to, like, their style of criticism works with you. You know,
Right.
Are you going to understand the feedback that they are giving you in a way that you are going to actually turn around and use that feedback? Or, I think that's really important too.
And I think also just like knowing that like it's a person who won't be offended if you don't take their exact feedback. Like when I got my readers for this, like not this revision, but like a previous revision, I compiled all of their feedback. I had like 10 readers, all of their feedback into a table, and got to see where things like overlapped and the things that really resonated with people. And sometimes, I think just having people who are willing to like say like, oh, it's your book, like, you're the one who knows best, and not be really prescriptive about what must change immediately.
Oh, yes, agree with that. I was an editor, so I have sometimes get really bossy, but it's just because I love my friends. So I'm often, even with Jenny, I'm like, listen, I really think you should change this, but it's your book, you can do what you want. Because I love the book, and that's just like a hard thing to turn off when you spend 4 years tearing people's work apart. So that's something that I know that not everyone likes a direct person, and I'm also not someone who's gonna like sugarcoat stuff for you. So for me, I do encounter that sometimes, because
There is no sugarcoating with Danielle.
no sugarcoating. Don't sugarcoat me either. Just tell me how it is. Another thing that is important is that you have something different that you can bring to each other's table. For example, have another critique partner who was my first ever critique partner. Her name is Christina, and she is so good at like writing descriptions and digging into emotions and just that aspect of writing, whereas I'm really good with like plot and character plot structure and character. So having somebody else who can look at your book and be like, man, you should show me more of this, that's something that I struggle with as a writer. So to have a critique partner who can help me improve that is fantastic. So those are also a balance in finding that. Anything else?
You are very good with motivation of the characters.
Other people's. Oh,
yes. No, I mean like of the characters in the book, and like, so I'm just saying what you bring to the table.
Oh, thank you.
Like, it's super important. I was like, what does the character want? I don't know, Danielle. It wants me to finish this book.
The most important question. Something that we haven't said yet, but we all talked about it, was the most important thing is you have to like their writing, and they have to like yours. You don't want to clog through a book that you just don't like. And maybe it's not the book itself, it's just their writing style. So Jenny made a point in our emails that it's better to find someone and just swap a chapter or two versus committing to a whole 80,000 words or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's how actually Irely and I met, was swapping chapters last year, which I think worked really well, to really get an idea of like what she was writing, what I was writing, and the same with the rest of my current writing group. We all kind of like dipped our toes in first, and then now we all read. We swap things all the time.
Okay, so we have one more section. Do you guys want to stop for questions now and then come back to our last section, or do you want to keep going? Does anyone have questions right now that they want to ask about? No? All right, cool. Well, this is our last thing. Let me upload this. We are going to talk with you a little about how to build a community. So Jenny, why don't you start while I upload all this stuff?
Yeah, so I have actually had a ton of readers across the years, and I've met so many people through Twitter. Twitter is a lot of really great pitch events where even if you don't have a book that's ready to be pitched to agents, you can see what other people are writing and don't be shy. Just respond to them and say like, this looks amazing. I know I've read for people just by like sending like a few like eye emojis. We've like been DM'd. There are mentorship contests where even if you do not get into the contest, like last year, I met my current writing group. All of us applied to Pitch Wars. None of us got selected for Pitch Wars. It's a mentorship contest. Even like just like finding other people who are at the current stage of things that you are at is really helpful. There are like monthly writing challenges on Instagram, which I've met a lot of people through, where you like, there's like a daily prompt that you just share, like you share snippets, you can share tips, you can get to know people that way. And honestly, like in-person events back when the world opens up, workshops, I've met readers through like, school. I took fiction classes at Hopkins and I've like met people that way. I've met people doing workshops, like Tin House is a really great YA workshop, or just like local events through the library, that like this, to meet people. There are lots of ways. You just have to put yourself out there and not be shy, which is not something I am. So I think you guys can tell that right now. So that's my tips to how to find people.
Besides Jenny, I think I met all of my critique partners on Twitter. I'm pretty sure.
You met me at an event.
Yeah, Cindy and I met at a book event. We went to an author signing of a mutual friend at the time. And we met each other there. I was sick as a dog, man. I was so sick. I should not have been there, but I was. And she was very nice. I was like, why are you talking to me?
We met at an event too.
Yeah, we met at an
the
author event.
Lee Bardugo.
Tracy and I,
We met at BEA.
yeah, we met at
Online.
BEA and on
Aw.
Twitter. Like that's where we first connected, was Twitter back in the day, because Twitter was awesome.
Yes.
But we met in person first, I believe, at BEA.
Mhm.
And then it slowly evolved. But all my other critique partners that I still regularly use were on Twitter. And one was also from, my gosh, what did you just say? Pitch Wars. Because I was a mentor back in my editing days, and I met one of them there because I didn't pick her manuscript, but she still liked me.
Well, that's, yeah, the mentor last year who also did not pick my manuscript gave me great notes, and now she has like offered to read things for me in the future. So even if you don't get picked, there's still really great relationships to be made.
Tracy, you said you didn't have, do you have other people that you've had in the past besides me?
Well, I mean, through blogging, I made a lot of connections. This was a few years ago. I don't know how much the blogging scene has changed, but I mean, it was pretty common that all bloggers were also writing on the side and things like that. And I made a lot of connections that way. And I still stay in contact with a couple. And also Nano, I have done camp, I've done it in November, and I've joined writing groups during that. And I think that's also a really interesting place to kind of meet people and connect and figure out, trying to find some groups.
We shared in the chats, shared in the chat some things that we've compiled, which talk about the thing that we open with is the biggest piece of advice is just channel Jenny and put yourself out there, because you just never know who else is looking just like you are. And maybe you ask and they say no, or maybe you ask and you find someone cool for this book or for life. Who knows? But you never know unless you ask. But Twitter, we listed out some of the hashtags we know they use on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook has a ton of writing groups. I recently went on a binge and joined like 14 of them, and have left a few of them since then, because you have to also kind of like gauge where you are as a writer. Do you need newbie information about where to put a comma, or do you need this aspect of writing? So there's something for everybody out there on that. And we listed some of the contests that Jenny was mentioning. Which when is Pitch Wars? People can still apply for that, right?
So submissions opened September 26th. So it hasn't even started yet this year. Our wish lists go live September 11th. So then you'll see what everyone is looking for. And you apply with your query letter, your synopsis, and your first 10 pages.
So if you're done with the manuscript, that would be maybe something to explore as well. We also found some websites, and Jenny and I aren't 100% sure on how great all of these are, but we did try to vet them a little bit before putting them on this list. So there are quite a few places that will help you. You can post requests, and they'll pair you up with other people, or you can dig through forums and find people of interest. So
I don't remember if I put that on there, but Maggie Stiefvater actually runs, like, is that on there, the kind of Google group? That one seems, and there's some subreddits that I've posted query letters and stuff on, and people have been nice and helpful. Reddit is always kind of a gamble.
everything. Anyways, those are some quick resources we found for everybody. Jenny, Tracy, Cindy, was there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't yet before we journey to questions or whatever?
I mean, I think the big thing when you're thinking about letting somebody read your work is to just remember that you are doing this because you want to get better and you want to improve. And it won't help you to not share your work. The only way you're going to grow is if you get eyes on it. So be brave. I know you can do it.
I think
And
that's
I
really
think-
good advice.
Yes, and Jenny said in an email earlier that to try not to be offended if you don't agree with someone's feedback, because they're not God. So go with that too.
Yeah.
But put your work out there, let someone read it, and then take the advice that you can and move on. Like, make your work better and keep going.
Right. There's even stuff, you know, that like,
make you quit. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I want to share on this. I've been saying I'm working on this book, and for a while, I shared it with like so many people just because I had not written in a long time. I was really excited about the project, and I maybe shared it with too many people. So then I had to like weed some critique partners out. And one of my critique partners left some comments, and they were good comments. They were just hard, painful to read comments that I, as in a draft stage, was not quite ready to hear yet. And every time I opened my document for like the next month and saw those comments there, I was like, I'm out, close document. So, and not to say our comments weren't great and I won't use them. I actually like downloaded the draft with the comments and emailed it to Cindy. And I was like, keep this until I'm done. And then I went through and deleted all of her comments, not because I didn't like them, but just because I wasn't ready for them yet at the stage that I was in. And I think that's important also to talk about because, you know, if as Tracy, as my beta reader who's reading what I'm writing, if she's leaving these like in-depth comments about questioning like X, Y, and Z and why I'm choosing to do it this way, and doesn't this make more sense? That's not really what you need sometimes when you're drafting. So there is like being able to find a balance of like, when do you share those kind of comments and when do you not?
Yeah, there's definitely such a thing as too many cooks, which is why like for me, like I have like that one critique partner that I send things like to every night. Like you mentioned, Cindy, and then there's like other people who I wait until I have a finished draft, just because drafting is such a vulnerable space, right? Like we have to hold that space for us to create and to be open to like our own creativity. And when you let too many voices in, I know that's part of the reason why I stopped writing for so long, was because I think I just let too many voices in as I was trying to draft, and nothing was getting done. So just
you have to
Yeah.
you don't know sometimes until you know, and you're like, what's the problem right now that I can't write this? I had to go through that for like a month, like what's wrong with me, because I know this whole story and I just can't get through it. And I had to realize like,
well, sometimes those like critical voices too they're the loudest, and I think you have to be able to judge when you're ready to receive that criticism. And for me, that comes after I've had a whole draft, I think. Because otherwise I just start to second guess every choice I'm making.
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance where you need to be encouraging while also providing this criticism. You know, and I think that also in the first draft, you're looking at different things. Like when I'm looking at your second or your third draft, Danielle, I'm responding and pointing out different things in each draft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once we're in a later phase of the story, then I'm looking more at more specific details and pointing out things and looking at continuity and things like that. But when it's just you drafting, I'm just looking at the wider picture and being like, okay, oh my God, what are we doing next? And oh, I love this, or okay, I'm not so sure about what's happening here. But, you know, I think you need to be encouraging while also providing your criticism.
And I think one of the things I learned in like a workshop a long time ago is to like phrase things as questions and like to keep it personal. Like when I'm critiquing, like I am asking like, you know, I'm curious about the choice you made here. Can you explain it? Or, you know, why would she say this? Or do you think we can add more emotion here? You know, like I tend to phrase it as a question because I also know that I'm only one person.
I still have your comment where you're like, why did they let him keep his ring? And I still don't have an answer to that, but I'm gonna figure it out one day. I will know why they let him keep that ring, but I don't know yet. I didn't think about that when I wrote it. So
sometimes you just like, I don't, that's the kind of like reader I am. I feel like I'm kind of like gently probing, especially in early drafts. And, you know, I don't get offended if people, you know, don't take my advice. Like Cindy said, I'm not God, so I am not like this all-knowing story queen. I am
I
wrong
am.
often.
So